Hei og velkommen til dag 2 av intranettdagene. Jeg Morten Myrstad fra The New Company, and we continue in English. Hello, welcome to day 2 of the Internet Days, where we have altogether 7 webinars. And today we are joined by Kjær. Welcome, Kai.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Kjær is the CEO and a co-founder of a company named SWOOP Analytics, and we in the new company, we have a cooperation with SWOOP because SWOOP is getting insight into platforms like Microsoft Teams, Workplace from Facebook, and Yammer. You could call it a social analytic platform or a people analytic platform. Could be several words of it. And we are sharing knowledge from SWOOP. And today the topic is how to create an engaging social post. And the data is based on insights from Workplace and Yammer, but it's relevant also for other types of social functionalities that you may have, either in an employee app or in internet. So keep listening and see what you can utilize in your company when Kai is telling his insight. And so now the word is yours, Kai, and please start to share a little about your company so that people get the context.
Of course. Thank you, Morten. All right. As you can see, are we sharing the screen, Morten?
I can share now.
Brilliant. All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So SWOOP Analytics is a company we formed about 6 years ago. We are headquartered in Australia, and the main job we have, I guess, is to be a bit like, I guess you can call it a Fitbit for enterprise social networks or enterprise collaboration platforms. So it's really understanding and what's happening and then helping us improve. And we have connectors for Yammer Workplace and Workplace from Facebook, and we're partners of both of them. And I guess the reason why they're interested in companies like us is you can really fly blind if you roll out these platforms. And the topic today, how to make a great post, really without measuring it, you've got no idea whether something was a great post or not, unless you go in like one by one and sort of go through all them. So the power is that once you start analyzing things, we can get really clever about metrics and we can help set ourselves goals. And that's one of the key reasons behind SWOOP. And we've been around for a while, and we got sort of pretty good at what we're doing. We'd like to say that we're experts in this whole thing around measuring collaboration. We've been doing it for a long time. We are partners of Facebook and Microsoft as well. And we're fortunate to be working with a lot of really big companies around the world that I guess is a proof point that what we're doing can't be entirely wrong. This point here about benchmarking is really relevant for the topic that we're talking about today. So we do some of the world's biggest benchmarking reports. The most recent one we put out is for Yammer, and that means that we offer all of our customers to opt in to participate in benchmarking. And then what we do, we then identify who are the top collaborative organizations, and then we go out and then we talk to them. And we talk to them about what their top performing communities are, what they're doing, and we get that through case studies. So that means that we have a very rich source of data and stories that we can draw from to try to look for these patterns of, for instance, most engaging posts. So that's what I'm going to be drawing on, our benchmarking data and all the customer case studies that we have in stories from the field, if you like, about how people are writing great posts and what we'll be sharing with you today. And we also do a lot of research. We have research collaborations sort of with different universities at any given point in time. And you can find out about all this stuff on our website on swoopanalytics.com. But let's get on to the real topic of today, which is how to write a great post.
Just a question to you,
absolutely.
regarding the data that is anonymous, right? Even if you get access to a lot of networks inside of companies.
Yes, that's right. So the data is fully anonymized. Of course, we still have a sense of what the companies are. So, but we have to go back and say, hey, we found out that there's this community which we don't know what the community is. There's something interesting happening. Can you tell us more? Or we'll go back and say, hey, it looks like you have performed exceptionally well. Tell us more. But you're right, all the data points that we store are all anonymized, so we don't know what people are talking about, and it's kind of makes the benchmarking even more powerful because we don't know the context. We just say, this looks amazing, what are you doing? And then these stories come out about what they're doing, and of course people are often quite excited to find out that what they're doing is being called out as being quite remarkable, because most of the time you don't know, right? You don't know how well you're doing compared to others.
And another point is it's not surveys, right? It is real data.
That's absolutely right. So it's real data. For instance, for both, we've just published a very substantial report on Microsoft Teams. And in that case, we looked at 100,000 teams. It was 324,000 people and millions of interaction points. So it makes for, it's very, very different to doing a survey where you get, I don't know, 5, 10, 100, maybe 1,000 people completing a survey, but it'll always be a very small proportion of the whole population. And as we all know, sometimes our memory sort of fails us a bit. We can't really recall what we did and what happened. But when you actually analyze the digital exhaust, we don't have to rely on people's memory because it's all there. So let's have a look at some of the core three tenets of what we found out what makes a great post. And I'll give you examples from different, so you can sort of put some more meat on this. So in the moment, I'm going to go through each one of these and show you some more examples of what they look like. But just in summary, as we talked to people about what they were doing, it was obvious that we can see some of these very engaging posts. One aspect of what made a post engaging was actually who posted it. So we can't get away from that. And I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment what that means, what we mean by the who. There was also the what, and that's basically what are they actually writing about? And there's certain aspects of that that's really important. And then there's the when, the timing of it, how topical it is was also important. Sometimes these overlap. Sometimes you'll find that there's a certain person who really just written something that's extraordinarily relevant right now. And that is kind of like an accelerator. But if you look at them, they've all had these three things in common. And then in addition to the who, what, and when, there was actually a fourth aspect that doesn't start with W, so we couldn't really put it in here. But it's the way that people are writing. It's about the authentic tone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. But let's dive into some examples that covers the who aspect of this. So on the left-hand side, you are seeing an example. In this case, it was a CEO for a healthcare company called Kjær that posted a post about COVID-19. It was actually a photo of Craig and his leadership team, and you can see here it's basically a post about answering questions about something that's quite relevant at the moment, and the person that was posting was the CEO, and almost certainly and almost always when you have someone who is, I guess you can call them the rock star, pop star of the company, someone who's really, really senior like the CEO, then that in itself can get a lot of attention simply because we're interested in hearing what these senior people are writing about. So, but it doesn't have to be necessarily the CEO. So we certainly saw examples of people that have other roles, and that could be a head of a particular domain. It could be someone who might have a particular relevant role, and in this whole pandemic times, you might think about the people that are involved, with health and safety or things like that. So the role you can get automatic attention just by populating a particular role without it actually being about being me, Kjær. It's just because the role that I have means that what I'm writing is relevant for a lot of people. The last bit is about reputation. I recall a story from a very big supermarket chain in the UK, and there was this person who was out on the road delivering goods, delivering stuff that people had bought, and he was just such a personable fellow, and he would write little stories about what he had learned during the day, and it was just his reputation, the way that he was writing, he just got this stellar reputation of him doing it. So he wasn't senior, he didn't have a particular role, but it was just that he built up this reputation over time as whatever he was writing, I got to read that, I got to comment on it. So those are the, I guess, a very a core part of this. Who is writing about it? As I said, we can't all, automatically become the CEO, or we might not have the authority, and earning that reputation can actually take quite a long time. So it's not always that you are the, if you like, the magnet that makes a post particularly engaging. And that means that if you can't really use that if you like, that magic card of it's being you, then you've got to think about, well, so what am I actually writing? So let's have a little bit of look about what we're writing. Again, when we looked at these posts, and we looked at the ones that had a lot of, we went out to the organizations that tell me about what you're doing and say, we've had some amazing reactions to these posts. And it was interesting that these posts that we saw were always very general in nature. So they weren't very, very specific to an area that includes just a small amount of people. It's something that appeals to a very broad audience. And here's a poll from Henrik. And you can see the question was, assuming we could end up splitting time between work from home, what would it look like? And that actually became quite a popular vote. You can see it was seen by 2,500 people, and 1,700 people actually voted on it. And Henrik is not actually, he didn't have the who card. He wasn't because, he was the CEO, or it was just, he asked a question that a lot of people really cared about. And suddenly that in its own right, I guess that, if you can argue, that almost makes Henrik, a who, but he wasn't that at the time when he was posting it. He was just someone that had a question that a lot of people cared about. So that's why it ended up being really popular. So really think about that when you're posting on whatever platform, as we talked about in the beginning, as Morten was saying, it doesn't really matter what platform you're using here, whether it's Yammer or it's Workplace, or you have a social app, or you have a social intranet or something. If you want something, if you're sitting there, the more specific, the more, I guess, specific it gets, the narrower the audience will be. And you can even think about, when you have people over for dinner, what we like to talk about is something that everyone around the dining table can talk about. So we talk about, I don't know, the last holiday we had, or we talk about something where we try to involve everyone. And I certainly know if I've got friends over and I start talking about technology, maybe half the audience will be very bored with that conversation. So we don't, for things to really grow, we want to make sure that it's quite inclusive, and that means that we have broad interests. I have an example here about a couple of examples that talks to the when part of it. So we talked about the who, the CEO, seniority, and so forth, and then it's going to be a broad and relevant topic. Let's talk a bit about the when you're posting. So there are two aspects about the when. One is, I guess, it's more that it is topical right now. So right now, this makes a lot of sense. And if you think about writing something, I said, Merry Christmas, everyone. Obviously, in the middle of the Northern European summer is not the time to do that. actually anyone writing anything about Christmas or we're going for winter holidays is probably not relevant right now. So where we see big posts is when you do then find an event that is very relevant. Here's an example of actually where you hit both the who and the when. So David McLean is actually the CEO of his organization, and they are planning. This was in 2020 to take a bunch of people away on a retreat. So they call it the 2020 Annual Legends Trip, and you can see he's posting in August, and he's saying this is coming in November. So it's all relevant right now, and he's saying it'll be a special one. If you know one who's done something to stand out, nominate them for the Legends Award. And then he's saying, can you guess where we're going? If you like to get the destination correctly, in the comments below, you could be the chance to win the hamper. So there's a call to action. He's very smart about it. He's gone to that destination, and it's relevant right now because you can nominate someone to be in this Legends Award, and then you could maybe end up going there. So it's a really good example of someone who's posting something at a time where right now that's relevant. But it's not just about these broader sort of something coming right now, or is there now or in a month. There's also something about the time of day, and this is where enterprise collaboration actually is quite separate to what you'll find on normal Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. There, people are really sort of active throughout the day, and probably in particular before and after work. But unsurprisingly, I guess, these work collaboration platforms, people are actually most active when they're working. So you'll see a peak of usage come in the morning, then there's often a drop over lunch, and then it sort of it fades out again, in the afternoons as people go home. So if you've been sitting there being really, really busy in meetings all day, and you're saying, I just need this posted just before I go home, you can click send and you're away. The problem with that is that then there's actually no one there to read it. And of course it means that the next time you come in the morning, everyone comes in the morning, they start posting, and then what you posted will just disappear in the feed. So my strong recommendation would be to you, don't post anything at 5 o'clock. Or on the way home. If you want to post something and put yourself in the best seat of doing it during the day, I definitely post it sort of, not very early morning, but maybe mid-morning, where maybe around, 10 o'clock, something like that, and you'll have most likely to have most people being online, and therefore it'll end up in the news feed.
Just a question to you, Kjær. When you have these three guidelines, you could say who, what, and when, and who is the one to gain the most knowledge and insights from this type of analytics? Is it the community managers and when they are planning ahead? But maybe even the business leaders, the CEOs or the subject matters, they should know about this because they can really see that they can get a reach.
Absolutely. It's I think the people that for whom this is immediately has got professional interest, of course, is the professional communicators that are often helping senior leaders getting their messages out. So there's undoubtedly for professional communicators, so the whole internal comms function. As you're correctly pointing out, actually anyone who's got a message that they would like to land with an audience, this is really important for them. And it's important for them because, it's when we have something important to say, we need to make sure we put ourselves in the best position to get that out. And we all know that with emails, you can, the open rate, people just go delete, delete, delete. So what we have, the way that people are now starting to write, and I'll come to that in a second, the way that people are writing for engagement, for call to action, to do something is very different because these interactive platforms allows that. So you can see what David here is doing. He's saying, we have a special one, guess where I'm going. If you like to get the destination, type in the comments below and you can win something. So you can see he's actually trying to gain interest and motivate people to put a vote in for the nomination. So it's a very different way of, in the old days maybe, where we would just send an email, and actually the worst thing that could happen is someone hits reply all, and productivity then drops for several hours, and everyone gets overwhelmed with these replies on email. And actually, the next example I've got here is also, this one is from Nestle, from Ryan Wade, who leads to the adoption and change efforts at Nestle. This is a huge company, as I'm sure you know, 180,000 people, and they're split up into what called zones. And the zone for Chris Johnson here, he's a CEO for the zone called Asia, Oceania, and Sub-Saharan Africa, which is pretty big. It's like tens of thousands of employees. And similar to the one I showed you before, he is also a very senior leader who is going out straight to the people. In this case, it's very topical because it's about celebrating the frontline heroes. And he's just, you can see, he's just put out the video, recorded it on the fly, and said, I shot this video for those working on the front line, thanking for their hard work in the extraordinary circumstances. And then the next paragraph is saying, why not join me in showing them your appreciation? Maybe post your own thumbs up content here, a photo, a message, video to let those working on the front line know how proud we are of them across the zone. So I think this is a great example of, it's coming straight from leadership. It leads us into this whole talk about how we are communicating, that authentic, informal tone. It's very clear. There's a call to action. So these are the kind of things that we can, is real good advice that the professional communicators can take to the senior leaders like Chris. For some of them, it comes natural. I don't know whether Chris was coached by internal comms or not, but it's wonderful to see. Well, I guess it doesn't matter whether he was or he wasn't. If he was, fantastic to the internal comms function for doing it. If not, he's just a bit of a natural that sees that for him to get to that front line, which is arguably the hardest people to reach. I know, Morten, you've dealt with pharmacies. It's getting to that front line can be really, really tough. So I think it's a great example here what Chris Johnson from Nestle is doing, and it's working. And that's the benefit of the analytics that I started off by saying. We being able to measure these things and being able to start to compare one post with another and say, well, what did we do that actually worked? Where can we improve? All the way down to the individual level. So we can go into our senior leaders and say, hey, we can see that some of these things didn't get the traction that we needed. What can we do to sort of spark more conversation around this? All right, so that was some really good examples. I hope you enjoyed them about the when. So let's talk a little bit about the how. So we had the who, the what, and the when, and let's talk a little bit about the how. So the how is the way that we are writing things and how it engages colleagues. So this whole thing about the tone of voice, is it authentic? I recall a conversation we had with an Australian bank called ANZ Bank, and Ryan, who is he's the head of the, I think it's called social business at ANZ Bank. He said to us, it's even written in a case study or in an article, and he said, you can smell a mile away if something has been written by a professional communicator. And I think it's just too perfect. So those of you who watch this, who have an internal comms function, I know you know exactly what I mean when I say it's almost too perfect. The message that comes out has probably got an attachment with a full your Q&A part of it. You thought through everything, beautifully phrased, commas the right place, carefully thought through. But that's not how most people write most of the time. So actually, and what we love to see with these social platforms, it becomes human. It's not a machine. It's not polished. It's a bit raw. It feels personal, and I can connect with the person. So the two examples I've got here, one is from Kylie Bishop, and she is actually the chief people officer at a health insurance company. And she posted there, if your online purchases have increased over the last month, you're not alone. We thought we'd like to have a bit of fun and share our latest purchases. And in its case, there was actually some videos that they put up. And I think that's a really good one of a very senior person just saying, you can see the style is just, it's from the senior leadership team and, what's happening in their lives.
Kjær, how do you recommend that, for instance, com or internal com are helping the CEOs or the other leaders to create the post, or should the authentic part be from their own, from the horse's mouth, as you could say?
I think they have a key role in suggesting things, but I wouldn't go as far as holding the camera or giving them a script to read from, because the moment you do that, it becomes too orchestrated. But I think that's definitely something where you're going to recommend and say, we think that as a leadership team, they might have been very, very busy dealing with the business impacts of the pandemic. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and still about return to work. What are we going to do with leases? Are we ever going to come back to the office as it is? There's a lot of work going on at the moment to sort that out. And it's easy as a senior leadership team to get caught up in that, and then saying, remembering that we also have to communicate with our staff and doing that in a really engaging and a sort of human way. So if we can get the internal comms function to suggest to them, just remember, to record little videos, do updates on, what does this week look like in your life? What does your home office look like, and share some photos on that. We also know that getting people active in groups that I guess have, like the social groups, even getting them to post it. One of the groups that's typically very popular is the pets group. Like I think in every company we come across, there will be a pets group, and it'll be extremely popular. And once we see a photo, with the CFO and their golden retriever or something, you go like, oh, look at that. And it's actually not about the annual report. It's not about hiring or firing people. It just makes the human that they have a dog too, and they also go for a walk. And it means that we can then establish this personal connection with someone. And it's incredibly powerful. I think if you look at all the celebrities that are in the world, and some of them we almost feel we know them. I know in that case, it's a very polished image, but we still feel that we know them, or we have a sense of what we think they are like in real life. So we can build a connection with them. And I don't think it's anything with senior leaders, given that we can't talk to all of our colleagues all the time, we can do the best that we can to show our humanity. And I think Kylie, for instance, is doing that here by showing a video from her own home and her own child, and how they're coping in these circumstances. The post from Shane Elliott, he's actually the CEO of a really big bank with I think 40 or 45,000 staff, and he posted a little post here that I think it's got nothing to do with the pandemic, but you can just see how authentic that is. So he's saying here, we made good progress recycling coffee cups. I've moved the battery recycling bins to be more visible and getting good usage, and we have reusable bag stations. Library trolleys are about reuse. And then he's saying, what else can we reuse or recycle but making it easier for our staff? Any ideas? And I think that you can just see, actually, if you look at where it says Shane Elliott, March 8, 9:01 a.m. from iPhone, like he did this on his own phone, right? And you can see it's relatively short. It's asking a question. It's actually really good the way that he shows a real passion for sustainability, and how he's encouraging people to suggest ideas. And if you think about communications, how in this case, you are totally shifting this around. Remember, think now 10 years ago, the CEO might be doing an update on the intranet, and it might be, report on meeting our sustainability targets. We have done this, we have done this, we have done this, and maybe it would have been well done to the sustainability team. And it was all broadcasting. It was all saying, I've got something I want to take out there. With these social platforms, to create something that's much more engaging, what smart leaders like Shane Elliott is doing is that they're giving a little bit of a snippet of what they've done, and then they're encouraging people to contribute with new ideas. So I think it's a total shift in thinking about how we get input from the front line, from our people that can feed back into sustainability, instead of just assuming that here in head office, we've done everything right and we're just going to tell you the results. So this is far more engaging than, if you like, a broadcast intranet update would have ever been. We have also done research that I'm going to be covering a little bit later about the actual impact it has. And I'll show you some numbers when you ask questions, and also when you mention people in conversation. I'll come back to that a little bit later. I wanted to mention something maybe unsurprising, and that is that if you use video and imagery, it will actually get you more bang for your buck in terms of engagement. So something that has, in the first case with Kylie, having those videos, I know that there's a lot more effort that goes into making and recording a video than just taking a photo up and uploading that. So we do see generally a lot fewer videos than you see images being shared. But we do consistently see that you get more replies and more likes when you add imagery. And I guess in the case with Shane, he's the CEO, so he's got that, you know, he's got the star attraction that whenever he posts something, he doesn't really have to worry about video and imagery, because he's such a magnet in his own right. But for normal mere human beings like Morten and myself, we might have to think about all the tricks of the trade that we can use to get to make things stand out a bit more. Interestingly enough, we actually did some analysis on how long or how short you have to write, and I was quite surprised about this. So I'm not talking about, this is looking across like thousands and thousands and thousands of posts and replies, and the general finding was that when you write about 500 to 2,000 characters, you get the most replies. If you write something that's longer than that, I'm thinking it's probably people that are taking an intranet article and just going to copy paste on your workplace. It gets too long. 2,000 characters, as you know, is actually quite a lot. So more than that, you're not helping yourself. But writing things that are really short is not good either. But in all this, you'll actually get probably the biggest bang for your buck if you're a normal human being and don't have these. The draw card of being the CEO is ask really good open questions, like the one that Shane is actually writing here. So let's have a look at a couple of other things. Here's a good example. This is from Workplace. Here's the Damon Rees is the equivalent of a CEO, I guess, for a government agency in Australia. And this one is actually, this is a really nice example because it's about the who, it's about the when, it's about the what, it's about, you know, the way that he's writing. So he's just hitting all of them. So Damon was saying here, you know, every day I come to work impressed by the caliber of people I get to work with, and we ask you to speak up in this year's People Matter employee survey. So they've just done this report, and he's reporting on the findings in the report. So it comes from Damon. So he's interesting because he's the boss. He writes about something that everyone cares about, which is the employee engagement survey. And then he's asking you, you know, he's asking you, how can senior managers listen more attentively to your ideas and concerns, and what channels do we use and how often? Isn't that cool? Like, I think this is just a brilliant way, again, of just not going out and saying, and here are the results of the survey, you know, but he's going out engaging with people and saying, you know, tell us, how can we improve? And some of the comments are there on the right-hand side. So just really engaging and got a lot of feedback. So I think it's a really nice example. I also want to show you examples of what not to do, because you can almost sort of think about, so if we take all this, and it can be fun to sort of just reverse everything and say, well, so what's the worst thing you can probably do? Now, I'm not sure that these are the absolute worst I've ever seen, but they're pretty bad. So we've also taken the names away, so you can definitely never find out who they are. And I'm just going to read you the one on well, what's in common between the two? They got photos. So you go like, oh, but Kjær, you said that imagery is really engaging. Yeah, all right, but it in itself, just whacking in a photo there is not going to help you out, because remember, you got to go the who's writing this, what are they writing about, and it's the timing right. So in this case, it's Emma writing to the finance community. And she's saying here, really excited to be spending the day with the buying app super users, community gathering feedback, providing lots of tips and tricks from our experts, working together to improve the way that we buy at blah, blah, blah. And, got like a few likes, and that was it. So look at that and say, well, so what went wrong? Well, so Emma in herself wasn't the one that was a big draw card. All right, what about the what? Is she writing about something that is of general interest? Well, how many people really care about this buying super users, gathering feedback, providing lots of tricks and tricks, which Emma chooses not to share, by the way. So we go in there and say, well, you had a great day, you had a wonderful workshop, learning something that you're not sharing with us. So it becomes one of those, show off bragging posts, doesn't it? The ones you normally see from Twitter or from Facebook, where people have put up, a photo, or Instagram, a photo of some food or something. So be very careful with this. It's the photo in its own right is not doing it. You really have to think about, if you haven't got the star quality that's going to get you an audience, what's in it for the reader? Why would anyone care about this? What is the value proposition for the reader? Why should I care? The one on the right-hand side is actually not much better. SEO pre-PI planning. I hope the audience know what this means, but using these acronyms means you probably excluded half the company. They got no idea what that means. Creating energy for agility with some rock, paper, and scissors. Well, and again, what do you do with that? It was actually seen by 1,112 people, so it ended up in people's newsfeed, probably because it's been posted in a big group. But it had very little engagement. In this case, I think there were 16 likes. It's probably half of the people that were at the workshop that can recognize themselves. But what's in it for the rest of us? Where's the call to action? Where's the learning? Where's the insight? So be very careful that we don't end up using these, whether it's Workplace or it's Yammer or it's another platform you might be on. Just be very careful you don't end up in this as just using them to just publish things that are unrelevant for people. So the thing we'd actually like to senior leaders in particular, because they have a disproportionately big impact on culture in organizations, we'd like them to think about their own collaboration style. So when you look at not just one post, but when you start to look at a whole set of posts over time, then we can start to dissect what is your collaboration style. And in SWOOP Analytics, we operate with 5 different styles that has proven to be really helpful in having conversations with people about the way that we think they should be, what they should aspire to become. Being an observer, well, if you are a communicator, you want to get a message out to your people, being an observer is probably not the right place. So don't be an observer. The other one, being a broadcaster, is also something that we are. Broadcaster, by the way, is those people, maybe the likes of our friend Emma that we saw on the slide before, that publishes things out, but doesn't really think a lot about the audience, doesn't think a lot about engagement. They might be looking at these social platforms as merely a way of broadcasting information rather than engaging. So we call them broadcasters. Fortunately, that there aren't many of them. That's a good thing. But if we can say that they are sort of aspects where you might be coming close to being a broadcaster, so be careful. The three last ones, the responder, the catalyst, and the engager, are all really good. It just means that the responder is someone that is happy to contribute, but they just wait. They might be the ones that are commenting on someone else's post. So they have a preference of responding over posting themselves. The catalyst is exactly the opposite. They start the conversation, and they write the way that all the examples that I've given you, whether it was the Shane Elliott or it was some of the other ones, are just starting the conversations, but they've done it really smart, right? They're really writing in a way that draws people in. So they spark conversation, and lots of people engage with that. So they get a lot of replies and they get a lot of likes, and that turns them into catalysts. The most difficult thing to become for senior leaders is probably to be what we call an engager. So we also make that one the most aspirational one. And that's where you have found this magical balance between you posting, replying, and liking, and people also getting something back. Because for senior leaders, it's not just about them pushing things out. These platforms are there to give people a voice. So it's also about engaging other people in conversation. And when you do that, you build up this profile of being someone that really cares, someone that listens. Because there's really only two ways that we can show someone that we're listening when it comes to online collaboration. You know, no one can see if I'm reading something on the screen. Some tools might have a little read count, but it's actually really high. No one is going to be sitting in there if something has been read by 100 people. Say, oh yes, Morten read that. So what's much more powerful is that you click the like button. So when you click the like button, it becomes more visible, and you are actually showing the person who either posted or commented that you are listening. Even better is when you reply. So when you're replying, you're really showing that you're listening. And we all do this naturally in conversations around, whether it's a meeting or meeting around the dining table. You know, I might say, hey Morten, you know, what do you think about this and this and that? And I encourage your feedback, you know, and Morten might say, oh, this and this and that. And as we're having the general conversation, and you can see Morten here, I'm saying Morten, and Morten might be nodding as I'm talking along. And when I look at these visual clues from Morten to see whether he's there or not, and that's so important that we feel that people are listening. And senior leaders, the most effective way they can do that at scale on these platforms is by liking and by replying. So therefore, we also have this rule, this very simple rule of thumb that you can take with you, and you can use this for not just if you're using a Workplace or Yammer, but any social platform that you're using for communicating. And we call it the 1, 2, 3 rule. And it's to get this balance right between posting, replying, and liking. So the rule basically says, whenever you do one post, then you do 2 replies and you do 3 likes. It's also a lot easier to like than it is to reply. It's also a lot easier to reply than it is to post. So therefore, it's a really sort of, you know, it should be an easy balance for you to follow. If you actually do 10 times more likes and 5 times more replies than post, it doesn't matter. But where it's problematic is if you are doing more posts or than you're doing replies, or if you never like anything. So really think about how often you are replying and how often you are liking. Now, remember I said some of these things about asking questions. You've got to be careful with this. Asking questions is fantastic, but don't overdo it. And don't ask clickbait questions. When you ask good questions that are relevant for the audience, that they are able to respond to, you can expect at least 150% more replies compared to when you don't ask a question. So don't do clickbait questions, but do meaningful questions. And I'll show you in a moment what it looks like in SWOOP, and we measure that and the impact that it's having. And there's nothing like seeing this for yourself when you can see how many replies do I get when I ask questions and as opposed to when I don't. And if I don't get any more replies when I'm asking a question, then I'm not asking the right questions. So that's a really powerful thing to remember. The same with when you mention someone. When you are posting something and you are mentioning someone in the conversation, and you can do that also on LinkedIn when you're tagging someone, that draws them into the conversation. Now do that, the most effective way of doing that is by making it specific to them. So I might say, for instance, mention Morten, fantastic webinar we had today. Morten, what are your top tips for doing something? And by that way, not only have I virtually tapped Morten on the shoulder, but I've also asked him to respond to something very specific. So mentioning can give you about 73% more replies. So just imagine when you start to put these things together. When you think about what you're writing, the topic, whether it's relevant right now, when you're adding imagery, when you think about how you want to engage people, what's the call to action, what do you want them to do, what's the question that you want to get answered, it becomes very quickly sort of almost second nature for you to think about this as you're posting. But I hope these little hints and tricks has made it a lot easier for you to, I guess, consider the aspects that make up a most engaging post. So a couple of examples of what it looks like in real life. Here in this case, we're using our platform SWOOP Analytics, and it's surprisingly easy to get a list of what are those top most engaging posts. And we use this to learn. We use this to learn for every company to learn what is it that then worked for us. And there's nothing like giving good examples that are relevant for your own company. So the ones that I've shown you today are from other companies. But when you can go into SWOOP and find the examples for your own company and say, well, that's something that worked well, and why don't we do more of this? That becomes really powerful. And of course, also things that you thought were supposed to be more engaging, you can go back and say, well, so that one didn't work out. Oh, we forgot to ask a question, or oh, we didn't do this. So having the analytics to help us understand what really works and what doesn't is really, really powerful. The same with this thing I've talked about sparking conversations. The curiosity index you're seeing in the middle. You might see just below that horizontal bar, it says the average number of replies for messages that include a question, 1.8, and in the example data here, when you don't, it drops to 0.5. Huge difference between asking a question and not. Huge impact in the engagement rates. And the same thing we've seen for the mention index. That's when we use that mention people to draw people into the conversation. Big difference. Not as big as they're asking questions, but still substantial lift. When you don't mention this example here, this person had 1.53 replies, but when they mention 2.15. So really, really makes a big difference. So I think in summary of what we talked about today, the who, the what, the when, the how, the 1, 2, 3 rule, asking questions, impacts of using imagery and video, how long the posts are, should all set you up to, whether you're using Yammer or Workplace, set you up, or any other social platform, a social intranet, an employee app, should set you up well to consider what you can do to improve. And if you need help along the way, I'm sure that both Morten and I would be more than happy to assist.
Yeah, that's okay. Hello, that's correct. And of course, if someone are interested to learn more about the usage of SWOOP Analytics, for instance, in Workplace or Yammer, but also in Microsoft Teams, we can do a personal demo. And there's also the possibility to have a trial. And sometimes you even also can be part of a pilot so that you can get some insight into back to 90 days, isn't it, Kjær? When you are implemented it in the correct way. So you're not depending on starting now, if you understand, and then only look at the data going forward, but you also can get some historical data.
That's correct.
So, but as Kai said, all these insights, you can use them, whether you are using an employee app or social intranets, or maybe even Slack or Google Currents, I think it's called, the platform they are having on social. But of course, what most people are using is Workplace and Yammer. So we thank Kai very much for this webinar and wish people a nice day.
Bye-bye, everyone.